explaining the paper. So we're doing 3 paragraphs. All right. And step 1, and hopefully most of you did these steps this week, choose a character, we will say, from the Middle Ages or the Renaissance or the Reformation or the Age of Exploration, something we've talked about this year, which covers a lot of ground because we've covered about 1,000 years this year. A lot of different things happening. So think about some of the things. They could be during the plague. They could be during the Crusades. They could be in Germany during the Reformation. They could be traveling with an explorer to the New World. A lot of stuff you could choose from. It does not have to be a person from history, if you know what I mean. An actual person who really lived. It can be a made-up character in your own head. But if you really, really enjoyed reading about someone, you know, a historical personage that was mentioned by Dorothy Mills, you can write about that person. I don't care. Either way. Fictional, non-fictional, fine. I want you to, about this character, describe or tell a story about this character. Now, I want to remind you again, at the very beginning of the year, we did these 3-paragraph story summaries. Yes, sir.
The way I've made my KWO is kind of circling around the pair of characters. Is that where?
You know, but that's fine. That's fine. I think we mentioned that. So if you have a couple of people that, you know, their lives interact or something, this is totally fine. Yes. Say that again, John. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. What do you say, Nathan?
So I kind of made my format like introduction, but no conclusion. Is that?
No, you know what? It doesn't really need an introduction and a conclusion at all.
I feel like it needed.
You know, it does seem abrupt. I agree. If you just say, Jack Sprat got on the ship to head to the New World. I don't know. And you're like, who is he? So it's, okay, guys, here's the deal. I said this last week. I am giving you the parameters. Do you know what I mean? This is the fence around what I want you to do. Anything inside that is fine. But I put outside the fence, please don't put things that don't belong in that time period, right? That's outside the fence. 2 paragraphs, that's outside the fence. But if it's inside this fence, it's good. I am really opening up, making it wide open for you guys. Do you know what I mean? If it does what I'm asking, I know you're all kind of freaked out because, oh no, she's going to make me rewrite it if I don't do it right. I know. I promise you, if you do what I've asked you for here, you're good. Okay? Describe it, and you could, if you wanted to make it in the form of a story. Remember, this is optional. We had our 3-paragraph stories where we talked about the character and the setting. That's a little bit like an introduction, isn't it? Sort of. You introduce me to who this is, where they live, and then this character has a problem of some sort. And then they solve the problem. Maybe they don't solve the problem. This is a depressing sort of story, but sometimes problems don't get solved. If Jack Sprat's family died during the plague, I don't know how to solve that. Except maybe he finds, you know, he moves in with his uncle and aunt. I don't like Harry Potter or Luke Skywalker or something like that, whose parents didn't die in the plague. So this is an option to make it a little easier. So you have a format, you know, all you need to do is make up some person who lived in the Middle Ages or the Renaissance or Reformation. What's the problem? Maybe the problem is their dad is going off on crusade and they're afraid that he's not going to come back. Maybe their problem is they're going off on crusade and they're afraid and they don't want to. Maybe their problem is Martin Luther is stirring up the church in Germany and you don't like it. Your character doesn't like it. Maybe the problem is your character lives in Geneva, Switzerland, and doesn't think Calvin punishes people enough for not obeying the rules. You see, you could, I know, which is, I don't know, but that would be a pretty strict character. Does this make sense? Like, just, you can invent for your character an issue. And then you've got the whole story sort of written. Do you know what I mean? Once you pick someone and you know what their problem is, and you can figure out how to solve it, or if it's solvable, or if they're just going to have to learn to live with it. Maybe they're burning somebody at the stake and you don't like it. Maybe they're not burning enough people at the stake. I don't know. Or if you don't like, I don't want to invent a problem and I don't want to do that. You could have 3 paragraphs describing 3 aspects of the character's life. So, or a typical day in this character's life. That has sort of a 3-part. They get up in the morning. What's morning look like? Do they have any food? What do they eat? You might have to be a little creative on that because we didn't talk a lot about that. What do they do all day? Are they a serf? Do they work in the fields all day? Or are they the lord of the manor? Do they tell the servants what to do all day? Are you a knight out on crusade? What is happening today? You're going to get up. What are you going to eat around the campfire? Open your packs, eat a little cold slimy meat that's left over from 3 days ago. Oh, I know. And then you're going to go out and attack I don't know. You're going to go start attacking Jerusalem to take it back from the Muslims? So you've got kind of 3 options here. Guys, don't do them all. Don't do them all. Choose one. Tell an actual story with a problem and a problem solving. Tell me 3 things. How do they live? How do they work? How do they worship? Or just describe, Jack Sprat gets up in the morning. This is what his morning looks like. This is what he does during the day. How will you remember? Well, once you've chosen, and for most of you, those who started this, hopefully, because I told you, start it, so that if you have a problem, you can bring it. So hopefully most of you have already chosen a character. You've already decided what format it's going to be. You've already taken some notes on it, and all you have to do this week is write it. But let me go back to that. I said last week, if you do that and then you have a problem, bring it. Does anybody have a problem? Nathan, lay it on us.
All right, so I want to kind of challenge myself and tell like a story from 3 different perspectives in one paragraph.
Ooh, yeah,
One person,
yeah.
I don't really know how to do that at all.
Okay.
But I think that I got the story down. I did not bring my food outline.
That's okay. Here's Warren, go ahead.
I'm having trouble figuring out what Paige's typical day would be.
A Paige's typical day. She didn't talk a lot about the Paiges. Okay. Because it talked about what age. Maybe you have to. Yeah. That's true. You might, if you don't have enough information, this happens sometimes when we're writing, you might have to choose something else. Sometimes we have to choose something else. If we had all the time, Oren, if we had another month, I would give you several good books to consult and you would go to the library and find them, but unfortunately we don't. We're just using Dorothy Mills as our history guide. So you might have to tweak it a little bit. I want to go back to Nathan's. Here's a suggestion, and maybe this is maybe you already know this. This is a stupid advice because you've realized this already. If you want to tell from 3 different people's perspective, you need to pick a very specific event, right?
Yeah.
Like not just a typical day, like a specific Luther is preaching, or the ship just came back from the New World reporting what they found, or a messenger just came telling us that in Italy they saw moons going around Jupiter or something like that. I mean, really specific, because if it gets too big, you'll get lost. You'll start kind of floundering around in it and you won't know what to say, and it'll get longer and longer and longer, filled up with stuff. So see if you can shrink it down. Think of one highly specific event that 3 different sorts of people might see in 3 different ways. If you're Spanish and the Spanish ships come laden with gold from the New World, that's good. If you're English and the Spanish ships come laden, we hate Spain. We don't want Spain to have any cash. So think of something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And does that help? No. Can you think of a question to ask about what a difficulty you see is?
Kind of just starting out the paragraphs, because I had to kind of like add an introduction.
Okay.
Do that stuff. I can't see how I can do the conclusion, but you said that's okay if I
Yeah,
do it.
yeah.
So just introducing each of the paragraphs.
Here's what I would do. You do not have to do this. This is Mrs. Ferguson's opinion, but there's plenty of other ways to do it. Here's what I would do if I were trying to do that, and I had 3 paragraphs to do it. Instead of an introduction for all 3 of my characters, I would introduce each one. The very first sentence of every paragraph for me would be, Jack Sprat, serf on the lands of Lord Dudley, woke up and heard the news about blah, 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 whatever the event is we're, choosing. And then the next paragraph, but when Lord Dudley interviewed the same messenger, he thought, da, 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 da. And when Father Clarence, the local priest, heard, then he thought this. And then you could introduce each character in the paragraph, and you wouldn't have to use up time introducing all 3 of them together. Does that make sense or help?
Yeah, that does.
Okay. Because that takes up, I understand your problem. If you want to say, there are these 3 people, Joe, Jack, and Sam, and then you feel like you need to explain about them. But if you just explain Joe in this paragraph, Jack in this one, and Sam in this one, make your reader wait a little bit. Lead them along, make them want to keep reading. Like, I want to find out who else is in this story. So you could wait and not introduce them until the paragraph they're in. All right, but let me say this one more time. If you do this, you did it. Do you see? If it falls in this category, if you chose a character, if it happens sometime in the 1,000 years we've been talking about this year, and you gave me 3 paragraphs, you did it. I would like parallelism 1, parallelism 2, a strong verb, a simile, and alliteration. By the way, I'm going to throw Bentley under the bus again. Your alliteration. I wrote on your paper, but I just wanted to tell everybody. I think your character was intelligent, something else, and iconic. Intrepid. Intrepid is an awesome word. Intrepid, intelligent, iconic. Technically, iconic doesn't alliterate. Because iconic, intelligent. It's not the same sound. So remember that it doesn't have anything to do with the letter you see at the beginning. It has everything to do with what it sounds like when you say it. Does that make sense for alliteration? Although those are awesome words, Bentley. Okay, are there any questions at all about this paper? Are we good? If you're writing and you just can't remember what I said, you get stuck, your mom has my email. Just email me your question or call me. Leave a message on my machine. I will call you back and we'll work it out. We'll figure out how to get you over the hurdle. Yes?
Are we allowed to add funny things in?
You can add funny things. I just would like not things that wouldn't belong in that time. But oh no, it can be funny. I would love a funny story. We don't have to be grim and serious all the time. Let's be funny. All right. So I would like you to bring that next week. And after that, we're probably just going to have, we only have 3 more times after today. So there's a limit to how much writing we can do for the rest of the year for me to collect it and get it back. Might have you do something really short, like a paragraph or something like that, so that we can turn it around fast. All right, we'll leave that. If a question occurs to you, your parents know how to get a hold of me, and I will help you. All right. Going once, going twice. Questions? All right. No questions. All right. Let's take a look at Scotland and John Knox. If you guys will turn in your reading guides to page 61, I'm going to tell you a story that sounds like it's made up, but it's not. And you're going to read about it later this year, but we won't have as much time to talk about it that week. So we might as well talk about it today. But first of all, whose work? This is the first question I asked you. Whose work did John Knox try to follow as he organized the Reformation in Scotland? Hans, say it again. Yes. Who was a bigger, like there was one of the big reformer names, and John Knox went to his city and studied there. So bigger than that, Caleb. No, wrong one.
I didn't even read this since we were on vacation. I'm just gonna take the wild guess of John Calvin.
John Calvin, yes. We're eliminating, right? Process of elimination. John Calvin. John Calvin set up a church in Geneva. Do you guys remember what Geneva was like? What was life like in Geneva while John Calvin was in charge? Why?
So many rules.
There were a lot of rules. Do you remember any of the rules? Yeah.
Like no elaborate parties.
Yeah, no parties, no fancy clothes. Do not, and this is the one that I really am, don't laugh at me. What? Don't laugh at John Calvin. Don't joke about his sermons. I get the impression maybe he wasn't very funny, but this is just, now Mrs. Ferguson is going to give a little TED talk, very short. This is my opinion. When people tell you not to laugh, this always bothers me because the world is funny. The world is very funny. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but you are funny. I am funny. I do funny things, stupid things, silly things. And I think if we stop laughing about it, that's not a good thing. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever done something stupid? I'm guessing, yeah, at your age, yeah. You don't have to go very long in this world before you do something stupid. And then, you can be all serious about it, or you can just say, man, I'm kind of a goofball. And you can laugh. It sounds like John Calvin just didn't want to laugh. I'm sure he had quirks like everybody else, but we're not supposed to laugh about them. This gives me the heebie-jeebies, yes. Well, yes, but this is even when we're not trying to be funny. It just is funny. I'm not going to bother you with an example because I'm sure I have many things. I have quirks, and sometimes they're humorous. And sometimes, do you ever know anyone who's not, you can't tease them? Do you have a friend or a family member that if you tease a little bit, they get really angry? And then there's other people, you tease them and they laugh, and they're like, yeah, you're right. I'm a goof.
And then they get angry, and if they tease me, it's extremely annoying.
Well, we all have to learn to take teasing, and yes, and we all have to learn, but not mean teasing. Do you know what I mean? Just observations about your goofiness. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm done with that talk now. But John Calvin said, do not laugh at me. Do not joke around. This is dead serious. And I just don't feel like Christianity is dead serious. I feel like it is very serious, but it's also full of joy. And Jesus's first miracle, lest we forget, was at a big party, a wedding. So anyway, so this you would think that people don't want to go there because it's not very fun in Geneva, you know. But people just flocked there to find out what John Calvin was doing, and so they could take it home and set it up at home. John Knox did that. He was from Scotland, and he said, I'm going to go to Geneva and I'm going to live there for a while. I'm going to check this out and then bring it back, and Scotland's going to be awesome. And he did. He went back to Scotland and he said, we are totally setting up a Geneva, Switzerland, and Scotland. And some people said, yay, because they thought the reforms of the church weren't really going fast enough. Some people said, what? I don't want that. I don't want that. So it was a bit controversial, but John Knox was very, very powerful. Oh, let's do, I want to go back to him and talk about his main problem in Scotland. But let's go to the second question first. How did Luther and Calvin differ in their opinions on what might be taught in the church? Nathan.
Calvin was more strict, and I guess, dang it, I don't know how to do what I want to say.
Okay. I'm gonna, if no one found, I told you what paragraph to look in. Hans, what do you think?
They did not always agree on how to use the Bible.
Okay, they didn't agree on how to use the Bible. And I'll read it straight out of here. Luther taught it. What I'm about to read is a very little difference, but it's a very little difference in words. It makes a big difference in life. Listen, Luther taught that all belief might be held valid that was not contradicted by anything in the Bible. Calvin, on the other hand, maintained that nothing should be held true that was not expressly stated in the Bible. And then in the John Knox chapter, it also says, Knox laid down the principle that in public worship, there should be no ritual or ceremonies which could not be shown to have the direct authority of the Bible. I'm going to put it in my own words. Luther said, if the Bible doesn't say you can't have it, you can have it. If the Bible doesn't say no instruments playing in your church, then fine, have instruments in your church. If the Bible doesn't say your pastor can't wear special robes, wear special robes. Calvin and John Knox said, if the Bible doesn't say do this right there, you can't do it. Now, here's a big problem, guys. The Bible tells you almost nothing about church worship. Almost nothing. We get a little hint in the book of Acts. They came together on the first day of the week for prayer and breaking of bread, which would be communion, and singing psalms. This is all we know. And this group of people said, unless it says flat out, do this when you get together to worship, you can't do it. It doesn't say you can have a picture in your church. It doesn't say you can have that needle point of a cross in your church. Can't have it. It doesn't say you can, I don't know, have pretty like flowers with trees in your church. Can't have it. Get rid of it. But Luther, on the other hand, said, I don't know. If it doesn't seem forbidden by the Bible, go with it. Should we set up a statue to Zeus in our church? No, because we're not supposed to worship false gods. Can we put up pictures? Sure, why not? Can you burn candles? Sure, why not? Doesn't say not to do it. But do you see the difference between one guy saying, yeah, whatever. If the Bible doesn't forbid it, go with that. And the other group of people saying, no. If you show me in the Bible the place where it says do this, you can't do it. That's the John Knox style. That's the Calvin style. The Luther style was much more, relaxed. Like, well, okay, if it's not sinful, add it in. If you like that in your church service, go ahead. And most of us we probably go to all sorts of different kinds of churches in this room, but most of us are more Luther than we are Calvin, if you see what I mean. Like I doubt you go to a church that's just stripped bare of everything except the little verse in Acts. Probably you have some music. Maybe you have musical instruments, things that it doesn't say you can do in the Bible. But Scotland was going to be set up like Geneva. Hardcore, you can't do it if the Bible doesn't say you can do it. And so people didn't like this, but there was one particular reason that John Knox had problem. This is the story I want to tell you. This story goes on for a while, but it gets weirder and weirder and more ridiculous sounding, like it's made, but I promise you I'm not making this up. Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Mary. This is not Bloody Mary. This is not Elizabeth's big sister. All right, this is a different Mary, unfortunately, but with the same name. Mary's dad was the King of Scotland, but he died, and she was pretty little. And her mom was French. So her mom said, we're going to go back to France, and I'm going to engage you to the Prince of France. They were betrothed. Yes, sir.
Why is like every queen back then named Mary or Elizabeth?
Well, because it is traditional that most people were given biblical names. And so Mary and Elizabeth, obviously, are big women names in the Bible. Yes, this is true. But I cannot explain. But a lot of these people are given names, biblical names. But yeah, we do. And I don't know where the Henry thing comes in. Just lots of Henry. I don't remember that. Everybody is Henry. There's Henrys, there's King Henrys all over the place. But anyway, come with me back to Mary, okay? Mary and her mom went back to France, and Mary was a little girl, and she was charming. And they said, when you get old enough, you will marry the Prince of France and live happily ever after. And she learned to draw and paint and sing and play musical instrument and read languages. And she was just very smart and cute, and everybody loved her. And then she got to be a teenager, and she married the prince. Yay. And the prince lived about 18 months, and then he died.
Wow.
And by the time Mary was 18, she was already a widow. And she was no longer going to be the Queen of France someday because her husband's dead. And so she kind of had to assess, what do I do with my life now? I'm not going to be the Queen of France. And people in Scotland said, why don't you come back and be our queen? Your dad was our king. Come back, you could be queen. And so we know this lady as Mary, Queen of Scots, to dissociate her from Bloody Mary, Queen of England. She is Mary, Queen of Scots. So she went back, and she's like not quite 20 years old, and she's young and happy. And the French court had parties and things. It was very happy. She came back to Scotland, and John Knox was in charge. Not in charge, but John Knox was very influential. And we already talked about how they felt about the parties and things like this. She comes in her fancy clothes, having her little parties. John Knox is not amused at all with Mary. And he even went in and chewed her out on more than one occasion. Like came in and basically told her she was evil and wicked. Also, she was Catholic. They were Catholic in France, most of them. And she came back, and she didn't understand, like, why can't I just go to my church service and have mass? And why can't you just have your church service? Do we have to yell at each other? John Knox said, yes, we do. Yes, we do. So he wrote a book, and I am not kidding. This is the title of the book. A Trumpet Blast Against the Monstrous Regiment of Women. Love this title. Regiment did not mean troops. It meant rule, queenship. He was writing it to say, it is wicked that women should ever be in charge. We should never have a queen. We should only have kings. Mary didn't like this. What?
That didn't work out.
No, it didn't, considering that during John Knox's lifetime, Bloody Mary and Queen Elizabeth were the rulers of England. And I won't go into this, but some of the best rulers Europe ever had were actually women. I'm not starting a, like a battle of the sexes thing here. It was just, he just thought it was terrible. He thought it was unbiblical that you should ever have a queen. And he just said so to Mary's face. Well, Mary is just sort of, happy-go-lucky, and she's trying to get along with people. Well, she'd been a widow for a couple of years, and she was young, and she found a guy to marry, Lord Darnley. Lord Darnley was from the royal family, but a distant enough cousin that it wasn't weird for them to get married, you know what I mean? But he still had noble royal blood, okay? So she marries Lord Darnley, but, see, this is the bad thing about the camera. I don't feel like I can just wander the room, because then it's just the camera's not looking at anything, but I want to wander because this is awesome. Here, I'll move this so I can wander up here. She and Lord Darnley got married, fine. But there was this Italian guy came to Scotland, and he was like a poet and a singer. And he could play music, and he was awesome. And Mary started hanging out with him a lot. So much that Lord Darnley thought, I don't like my wife hanging out with the handsome Italian guy all the time. And so once Mary and some other ladies were, I don't know, in a room somewhere chatting with the Italian guy, and some guys came in and just murdered him. Just murdered him right in front of Mary. Just stabbed him to death. And Lord Darnley, her husband, I had nothing to do with that. I don't know what happened. Unclear. He claimed, I don't know what happened. Okay, so this shook Mary up a little bit, obviously, if someone's murdered right in front of you, some friend of yours. But she stays with Lord Darnley, right? And she gets pregnant. And, she's not always with Lord Darnley anymore. They have different castles, but she travels around because she's the queen. But she finds this other guy that she's rather fond of, and whose name is unfortunately escaping me right now. And here, it's bothering me. We're going to read about this later. Give me a moment. What was his name? Okay, Lord Darnley. Oh, Bothwell. Earl of Bothwell. Okay, got it. So we'll just call him Bothwell. All right. So just hanging out with Bothwell a lot. His name, he's the Earl of Bothwell. Bothwell wasn't actually his name, but sometimes they would call people by the name of whatever they were the lord of, So they just call him Bothwell. For quickness purposes, we will do that. She's hanging out with Bothwell a lot. So much that they start making up little jokes about the fact that the baby she's going to have doesn't belong to Lord Darnley. But Lord Darnley got sick. He was really sick. And Mary said, I'm going to go to Darnley, to my husband's villa, house, castle. I'm going to take care of him and nurse him back to health. And she does. He's getting better. But one weekend, she says, well, I need to be gone this weekend. I think you'll be okay. She leaves.
She dies.
His house blows up. Someone blows up his house.
That's awesome.
And we've got more to come, Jaden. This isn't even the end of the story. Someone blows him up.
Does it
And
actually blow up, or is it just a lot of flames?
oh, it blows up. It blows up. Like they find his charred body in the garden. Like it just flew out. It blew up. Because this is a gunpowder time. All right. They blew it up. And so Mary said, who blew up my husband? I had no idea. But she left that particular weekend. You see what I mean? She was gone the weekend it happened. So obviously, suspicion is heavy. John Knox is all over this. It's like, our wicked queen who just blew up her husband. She's like, I didn't blow up my husband. I didn't do it. And Bothwell, did you do it? He's like, no, I didn't do it. See, Bothwell didn't do it. Okay, but I know. Okay, so here's another fishy thing, because we're going to get, it gets crazier if that's possible. So public opinion is weighing heavy on Mary, Queen of Scots, right? People are starting to suspect she and her husband are having various people murdered, and John Knox is, and so she runs away. Where can I go? Where can I go to be safe? Because they're gonna arrest me or something for murder. So she runs to England, where Elizabeth is queen. Elizabeth is a relative, because Mary, Queen of Scots, I don't know, like grandpa, great grandpa, was the same as Elizabeth's grandpa, Henry VII. She was a direct descendant of Henry VII. So she said, Elizabeth, will you please protect me? Now, Elizabeth is in a very bad position. Here's why. Elizabeth is Protestant, and not everybody in England likes that. Some people would like to get rid of the Protestant lady and bring a Catholic lady in. Oh, how about Mary, Queen of Scots? If we bumped off Elizabeth, we could put Mary on the throne and we'd be Catholic again. So they started to invite, like there were little conspiracies, right? From France, because the French love Mary, right? She was married to their prince once upon a time, and they're Catholic. We're going to send some assassins over, and we're going to take out Elizabeth, and we're going to put Mary on the throne. Elizabeth knows this. So she says, Mary, I will help you. Here's a house for you. We will protect you. But no, that would be ironic. That's what you call ironic. The house had guards, and the guards were not to keep people out. They were to keep Mary in. They said, come on in. We're just going to protect you, right? We're going to protect you from leaving ever. Because if you do, you're going to go to France and you're going to get a conspiracy, and they're going to come over and they're going to murder Elizabeth and put you on the throne. Because you're in the line, the royal line of England. So this is going on. By the way, she ended up being under guard 19 years. Not kidding. 19 years. Yes, sir.
Why didn't Mary just go to France? That's where all of her
Well, she should have done that. But I think maybe she thought she could pass through England and go to the south and get a boat there or something. But she was detained for 19 years. Okay, now here's the thing, Jaden. Here's the thing that is even crazier than the rest. Maybe not, but it's an additional crazy. In the meantime, while Elizabeth's saying, what do I do about this lady? I'm going to be assassinated if I let her live, but if I just kill her, that seems in poor taste. Also, it might make people mad at me. I don't want to be that sort of queen, that I don't want to be like my dad, Henry VIII. So she's sitting there in her house with the guards, okay? And in Scotland, they find a box. Now, they used to call a box a casket. Today, we mean coffin when we say casket, but they just meant, when they say casket, they just mean a box, a pretty box, like you'd keep trinkets in, okay? So they found a casket, and inside were letters. They were letters between Mary and Bothwell about murdering her husband, about blowing up the house. They're called the casket letters. Unfortunately, we don't have the originals anymore, but they copied the contents. We know what was in them, but we just don't have the actual letters anymore. Okay. And they bring these to Elizabeth and they say, look, this lady you're harboring, we caught her red-handed. She wrote letters. And they said, Mary, what's the deal? She said, I have no idea what you're talking about. These are forgeries. These are obviously forgeries made to make me look bad. And guys, no one knows. To this day, no one knows. Did she actually write those? She and Bothwell? Or did somebody do a really good forgery? And we don't have the originals anymore. So we can't do sort of computerized tests for forgery. Back in the day, all you could do was say, okay, here's one handwriting, here's the other handwriting. All right, looks good to me. But now, you could superimpose them with a computer, you could scan them in and you could study them and everything. We don't have them. We can't do it. So she said, I've never seen these letters. I don't know what you're talking about. Now, most scholars kind of think she's telling the truth. And here's why. Guys, if you're going to blow up somebody, do you save the letters explaining the whole plot?
No.
Of course not. It's like Secret Agent 101. The very first class you take is destroy the evidence. Oh my gosh, read the message and then eat it, right? Don't, Mission Impossible. This message will self-destruct in 10 seconds or whatever. We want no trace. Is she really that stupid that she saved, or Bothwell, that they saved all the letters that said what they were going to do?
And fancy attractive looking box. Not like
Yeah. No, I don't even remember what happened to him. It wasn't good. I don't remember if he got off scot-free. I don't remember if he escaped and ran off to Europe somewhere, to the mainland. I don't remember. But see, I am funny and I didn't even know it. Anyway, Mary sits in various houses, in detention for 19 years, till finally there's just one conspiracy too many to bump off Elizabeth, get rid of the Protestants, and put Catholic Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne, and they executed her. Finally, they convinced Elizabeth, you got to do it. Somebody's going to take you out. As long as she's alive, somebody's going to try to come in, get rid of you, and put her on the throne so they can all go back to being Catholic. It's going to happen. So finally, they convinced her, and she signed the paper, the death warrant for Mary. And Mary tried to run away several times. She got as far as the coast once to find a boat, but they kept catching her. They just kept catching her. And I'm sure you've read enough books or seen enough movies that once you try to escape from a prison, they watch you more closely. Every time they crack down a little bit more, make it a little more escape proof. This is what kept happening to her. She had the baby whose father may or may not have been Lord Darnley. And they named him James, just like every guy in Scotland's James. And when he grew up, he became King of Scotland. After she ran away, when she ran away, James was like a baby or a toddler. She never saw him again. He never saw his mom again. But they made sure James was raised Protestant and to be a decent king of Scotland someday. But when Elizabeth died, she had no children. And all the other heirs, there weren't any. But there was one, Lady Jane Grey, and she conspired for somebody tried to put her on the throne, but that ended poorly and people died. Okay. But they said, James, you need to come down and be King of England. Mary, Queen of Scots' son, James. He was James VI of Scotland, and he came to England, and we know him as James I of England. This is the King James Bible, James. That's the story of his mom, Mary, Queen of Scots. James, this is not something that Dorothy Mills is going to talk about. It goes outside past the end, but I will tell you this. James had a little thing in his upbringing in Scotland that didn't work out well, and it was this. They taught him that kings had direct power from God, and they really couldn't be disagreed with doing wrong. And we know this is the divine right of kings. A lot of people think that all through the Middle Ages they thought that. Not so. It was a Renaissance thing. The idea that because kings are put in charge by God, they must always be right and you must do what they say. James believed this. So he kind of waltzed south and came into England like, look at me, I'm the king. And the English are saying, yeah, we have a parliament. You have to call the parliament and have a talk to raise money. But I'm the king. What? And they didn't get along. The English and James didn't always get along because James thought he could do anything he wanted because he was king. And the English said, yeah, we have this thing called the Magna Carta that says you can't do anything you want. This was a shock to James. One thing you read about that he did that we revere him for is he hired some people to make a new translation of the Bible, the King James Version of the Bible. But so the story never ends. I mean, it just keeps going, like Charles and William and Harry, they're all part of the same story here. But eventually I have to stop telling it, but I'll stop it soon. James had a son named Charles. And Charles got a double dose of the I'm the king, I can do whatever I want to upbringing. And so after his dad James died and Charles was king, Charles tried to raise money without parliament, and they said, I don't think so. And he said, well, then I'm just not going to call you. All you parliamentary members, go away. Don't come back. So he went for a long time without calling a parliament, and he got money however he could, in whatever legal means, and maybe not legal. But eventually he called the parliament again, and then he didn't like what they had to say, and he dismissed them like in a day. No, go away again. But eventually he needed them. They got into it, and a war broke out. A war between the supporters of the parliament and the supporters of the king. They had a civil war. England had a civil war. And guys, poor Mary's grandson, Charles, they chopped his head off. The English killed their king, and they didn't even have a king for 20 years. But the guy that was in charge, he was super Puritan, Oliver Cromwell, super Puritan, no parties, no Christmas. This was a nice Puritan thing, no Christmas. We do not celebrate Christmas because it's just a reason for people to drink and have parties. That is out. And then people got tired of that. And then when Cromwell died, like, you know what? Let's bring Charles's son back. We miss the kings. And yeah, Charles II. Yeah. No. Oren, they should celebrate by spending the day in church and then sitting at home in quiet, meditating on all the horrible sins you've committed and why Jesus came for you. I'm not saying that's not a bad thing to do once in a while, but here's the thing, guys. Okay, this is going to sound weird to you. Religious holidays are Catholic. The Catholic and Orthodox churches had feast days, right? And they celebrated the feast days. Not only Christmas and what the Westerns call Easter, the Easterns call it Pascha. They celebrated this, but they also celebrated all sorts of saints' feast days. And when they didn't want the Catholic Church anymore, they put an end to the feast days, including the ones that pretty much all Protestants keep now, Easter and Christmas, right? That's kind of the last holdouts of the feast days. We don't celebrate, Michaelmas or Candlemas or, the other feast days that we always had. And Thanksgiving isn't technically, it's an American holiday. We are supposed to give thanks to God, but it's not technically a religious holiday. And the word holiday, listen to it, holy day. That's what holy day. That's what that word is, holy day. And so the church had, I don't know, like 150 holy days. And it's a feast. There's no fasting on that day. There's no fasting rules. And you eat whatever you want and you have big parties. And then when the Protestants particularly like the Calvinists came in, they said, that's wicked. It's Catholic. We can't do that anymore. So nix on your Christmas parties. Yeah, just that Orrin had his up first.
But British people call vacations holidays.
They do now, but
That's
Orrin, this source. Well, here's the reason. We have all sorts of holidays. We have stupid holidays. Like talk like a pirate day or something, you know. So, but most of our holidays are stupid, made up. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say the word stupid, but they're made up substitutes for holy days because people do want holy days. And if they take away their church holy days, they will make up new holy days. So we have 4th of July. There's nothing wrong with celebrating 4th of July. It's not a religious holiday. We have Thanksgiving. We substituted all those feast days that people rejected because they were Catholic. Well, now we make up our own holy days. It's getting weirder. You know, now we have Pi Day and Star Wars Day, and I mean stuff that's just ridiculous because we no longer have the feast days. If you go to an Orthodox or a Catholic church on one of these, like Mother's Day, they don't even talk about it. They don't even mention it because it has nothing to do with the church. It's not a feast day. But if you go on a feast day, they will talk about the saint of that day, you know, even if it's not a holiday. So part of the world has kind of substituted holidays. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was a very long talk. And just a second, that just to say that, yeah, the Puritans, no celebratory holidays because they thought it was Catholic. That's what the Catholics do. And that's wicked. Okay, Zach, yes.
What did the Catholics celebrate on Halloween? Because I mean, that's a really old holiday.
It's actually November 1st is the actual. It's All Saints Day, All Hallows Day. So the night before is All Hallows Eve, Hallow Eve, Halloween. It's actually the vigil service for All Saints Day. So in the Catholic Church, I'm sorry, but we have plenty of time. We have lots of time today.
It's like the Good Friday of All Saints Day.
It is. So All Saints Day is the holiday. But then in the Catholic Church, they do a thing. The Orthodox don't do this, but the Catholic do, where the evening. Okay, are you guys aware that for the Jews, the day started in the evening? Like you went from evening to evening. So at sundown, the next day begins. So if it's the Sabbath and you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath starts at sundown on Saturday night and it goes till sundown on Sunday night. All right. So the sundown, that's how they trace their days. So the Catholic Church kind of took that. So often they have services the evening before. Does this make sense? But it's for that day. So today you could go to a Catholic church on Christmas Eve evening and they will be having a Christmas service. It's the Christmas because at sundown the day starts. Or for Easter or whatever, they'll have, it's called Vespers. They'll have the evening before. So Halloween is the Vespers, right, for All Saints Day. So that's the holiday. It's actually November 1st.
What do Catholics do? They just have like a mass.
Yeah, there's a special service. And usually they'll have one that evening, Halloween evening, or you can go on the next day, on November 1st. They'll have another one because not everybody, they often have more than one because not everybody can come at the same time. Do you know what I mean? If you work evenings or whatever, then you can't come. Or if you work during the day on November 1st, you can't come, so you come the evening before. And they'll give you more than one option, you know. But yeah, it's just basically another church service. But they'll talk in the Catholic Church. Orthodox Church doesn't really do All Saints Day, do they? I don't know. They bring pictures of loved ones who have died. And you display them through November. Like you'll just bring in a little picture of, Grandma Susie or whatever that's in heaven with Jesus now. And they put them out because it's All Saints, We're remembering all the people, all the followers of Jesus who have died and aren't here anymore. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Probably more than you ever wanted to be answered. It does go back a long time. And it's, does it probably have pagan-y things? Maybe, but the people who say it's a horrible pagan holiday, it's not really true. Because they would dress up. It was a religious thing. It was like to scare the demons. It was to ridicule the demons. Do you remember we talked about that it's not a good thing to not want to be laughed at? It's notorious that the devil and the demons don't like to be laughed at. They don't like to be made fun of. You're powerless, you're useless, Jesus has conquered you. They don't like to hear that sort of thing. You're ridiculous. Satan doesn't like that. He doesn't want to be ridiculous. So we laugh at him. We laugh at him not because he's funny, but because he's beaten. And usually we don't laugh at people when they're down and beaten. But I think it's okay to laugh at Satan because he's down and beaten. Yes.
You should go with my brother. It's like strictly Jesse.
Okay.
Strictly like no Halloween.
That's okay. You know, a lot of people, I used to feel that way myself. And then if you read a little bit more about history and you learn more about church history, you just start to, sometimes you change your opinions.
It's okay,
But I don't think the same thing I used to think about a lot of things. Okay, let's wrap this up and then move on to the Return of the King. List some of the people who translated the Bible into English before 1600. This was the next question. What were there any English Bibles before the King James Bible? Yes, there were a bunch of them. Miles Coverdale and William Tyndale and Wycliffe and the Venerable Bede that we read about a long time ago. He translated the Bible into English, and or parts of it anyway. There were lots of English Bibles. Why do you think they wanted to make a new one? Why did King James said we need a new Bible? He didn't think it was beautiful? No, that is not true. The King James Bible was the revered Bible. Well, I said what English Bible was most used from 1611 to 1881? King James. There are Bibles like that. But I think that's the founding. Thomas Jefferson did that. I hate to shock you about that, but Thomas Jefferson tried to do a expurgated, I'm removing all miracles from the Bible. The King James Bible is legitimate Bible because they didn't really happen, because miracles don't happen. According to Thomas Jefferson. Yeah, he's a really smart guy, and I'm really glad for everything he did for our country, but I'm just telling it like it is. That is what he thought. Yeah, it's a little troubling, but no, King James Bible. So it was the Bible for 250 years. It was the go-to Bible. When the Pilgrims got on the Mayflower, they brought a King James Bible. They also brought the book Pilgrim's Progress, was also exceedingly popular. It is considered, and you guys, I know you're going to groan, whatever, but it is true. It's some of the most beautiful English ever written. It is beautiful. Modern translations might be more understandable, but they are not more beautiful. And some of our greatest English writers were raised on that Bible, and it made their English beautiful. John Bunyan is one of the who wrote Pilgrim's Progress. He didn't really have much of an education. He was a tinker. He repaired pots and pans. Almost zero education. But he read the King James Bible over and over and over. So much that this beautiful English poured out of him. And often, well, when I was a little girl, if you were going to memorize scripture, you memorized the King James because it was so beautiful. So the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Right? That's the version that he maketh me lie down in green pastures. You learned it that way. Now, here's the problem with it. Have you heard it said that way? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Have you heard that? You haven't even ever heard that? No. Warren. Oh, okay. What does want mean? What does that mean? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. No, need. It doesn't mean what it means now. This is the problem with using an old version, right? We think it means I don't want anything. In other words, I don't desire anything. It means I don't lack anything. To be in want meant to be without, to be lacking. So what they're really saying, and that's what more modern translations say, right? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall lack nothing. That's what that means. So sometimes the problem is we read this beautiful Bible with a beautiful English, but we don't understand what it means anymore. One of my irritants is helpmeet. Maybe this is too antiquated for you to ever have heard this. Eve was Adam's helpmeet. And then sometimes they end up calling it helpmate because helpmeet sounds weird. It's a misunderstanding of the Bible. Meet meant suitable. It was the verb. It says, he made a woman, he made a help meet for him. He made a help meet for him. It made a help, one word, meet for him. Meet means suitable. So it just drives me bananas when people call something help meet. Like, that's a noun and a verb. It's not supposed to go together. He made a help meet for him, not a help meet for him. Anyway, that's the problem when we read old translations. Sometimes we don't really understand what it means anymore. Yes, sir. 2 E's, not an EA. Yes.
It still says, I shall not want. Or, I mean, not shall, but.
Good for them. So I realize like I said, I saw some of your faces when I said that, but it is some of the most beautiful English that's ever been created. This was at the time of Shakespeare. Also some of the most beautiful English that's ever been created. We, for the most part, aren't producing beautiful English anymore. It's dumbing down. We're on the downside, and we're getting lamer and lamer.
Yo, what?
Indeed, thank you. People don't use punctuation. Oh, okay, that is another Mrs. Ferguson TED Talk I'm not going to give today. Okay, so that wraps up. We were all over the place this morning, but because it was just fun, and because here's the thing: one story always leads into another story. There's no end. It just keeps. It's all woven together. So John Knox. I'll wrap it up this way. John Knox changed Scotland, right? Made Scotland more Calvinist. And then by the time James, Mary Queen of Scots' son, became King of England, it had filtered down. And there were lots of people in England that said, I don't want any, for example, in this Anglican church, it is wicked that the priest wears a special robe. Wicked. It is wicked that they light candles in that church. We got to get rid of it. And these people are the people we know as the Puritans, right? Because they want to purify it. We're going to make it purified. Unfortunately, purified into what? That one verse in the book of Acts? What are we going to get rid of everything? Some people thought the Puritans didn't go far enough because they said, no, you Puritans, you just want to clean it up and you want to stay. The church, the Anglican church is so wicked, we just got to start a new church. And they're the separatists. The Pilgrims were separatists. They were just making up their own church. This is why they got thrown in prison and ran off to Holland, because they were tired of not being able to have their own church. It was against the law to have your own church and just start a church in your house. They didn't allow it. And the separatists said, we're going to do it whether you throw us in prison or not. The Puritans didn't want to leave. They just said, we got to clean things up here. So all this stuff we're talking about directly affects us. The people who settled Massachusetts, they're the descendants, the spiritual descendants of Calvin and John Knox. Okay, now I am about to say something super important. I still predict somebody's not going to know, but I am doing the best I possibly can to make this clear. Everybody in your reading guide, turn to page 63. I have made an editorial decision that I'm changing things up. On page 63, it should say week 28. Does everybody see week 28?
Yes.
I want you to grab a writing utensil, and over the top of that, at the top of the page, I want you to write skip. Read chapter 18, next page. You read, aren't you lucky? You don't have to skip. So we are skipping week 28. We're skipping it. And you are reading the week 29, chapter 18. So when you go to do your reading for this week and you open up your reading guide, you will see this. Don't read it. You can put exclamation points and stars or whatever it is that will make you catch the attention. I do this all the time and then I ignore it for some weird reason. Because you guys have one less week than I teach. I teach 32 weeks a year and you guys only do 30, so we have an extra week every semester. And I decided this is the thing that for you guys, we're going to skip. Because I want to spend plenty of time talking about Queen Elizabeth and Shakespeare and Francis Drake and all of that. That's, instead of murdering the French Protestants. I'm going to skip the murder of the French Protestants. But if you want, like Nathan, you want to find out, I was only going to have you read the second half of chapter 17. It's a horrible story about the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. The Queen of France wanted to bump somebody off and tried to assassinate them, and it didn't. They got away, and she said, "Well, let's cover up. Let's just murder them all. Let's just murder them all." And they just went on the streets and they just murdered Protestants wherever they could find them in France. It was awful. Okay, everybody got that? I already sent your moms an email also with a big please note. We're mixing it up. Make sure your student is reading the right section. Okay. What? You know what? You can do that. Because if you guys are going to miss something, so I decided we're going to miss murdering Protestants in France. Okay. Let's spend the rest of this time talking about Return of the King. Here's what I wanted to talk about today. Oh, by the way, we're reading chapters 5 through 10 for next week. Chapters 5 through 10 of Return of the King. All right, don't give anything away. Also, if you've seen the movies. If you've seen the movies, you may not know. In fact, you don't know some things that are going to happen because they just didn't, unless you read the book. They left out a lot. Yes. So this finishes the first half of the book, 5 through 10. You know how it's got like a part 1 and a part 2, each of these? This finishes the first part, 5 through 10. So we have 2 more, because we only have 3 more times. So we'll have 2 more times. No. Oh, no, you guys will have 3 more times of this. If you look back, you guys should look at the stack of things we've read this year. It's a lot. We've read a lot. Okay, here's what I want to ask you guys. What is the opposite of hope? Discouragement? Despair? I was thinking of despair because do you guys know this? Because you're all taking Latin. This is a good thing to know. Okay, most of you, some of you are taking Latin. Sparrow. Sparrow means I hope. Despero means to be without hope. Despair literally means to have no hope, to be without hope. And I noticed in the 4 chapters we read for this week, some characters seem to have despair and some characters seem to have hope. Can you think of someone you're reading about that you read about this week that seems like they're despairing? Who in this story is despairing? Because it doesn't look good. Is Frodo despairing? Frodo is unconscious at this point, so he's not really thinking anything. This is true. Sam, do you feel like Sam despaired? Well, first of all, we didn't read about Sam in these chapters, right? Because we left Sam at the end of the 2 towers. But where did we leave Sam? What was Sam about to do? What did he say? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go rescue him. There's only one thing to do. My master is unconscious in the hands of orcs who are going to torture him horribly to death. And he's in a stronghold of orcs, and I guess I have to break in and get him out because that's my job. You don't leave the master. So that doesn't sound despairing. I mean, he might not think he can do it. Oh, here's a good question. Is thinking something will be difficult or maybe impossible the same as despairing?
No.
Well, if you,
Thinking is kind of a challenge.
it's like a challenge. If you despair, do you even try? I don't think you even try. Like, forget it. Never happened. No good. Can't do it. Sam says, well, okay, I may die in the attempt, but I'm going to try. So I feel like he's still got some hope because when every single bit of hope goes, you stop. But I am thinking of a particular character in these first 4 chapters that keeps saying things like, this is going to end badly. The darkness is too strong. Okay, Eowyn is a little, well, you said discouraged earlier. Somebody said discouraged. She's definitely discouraged. But again, did she give up? I mean, is she trying? What is she doing? Do we already know this? And do we already know this? You know what? I think we do because in the movie, the Muster of Rohan. We know in the Muster of Rohan.
Oh, we can't count.
Yeah, no, you can't count on the movie. Thank you. Yeah, Eowyn is going to battle. So this doesn't sound like despair. She definitely feels like it's not going to be good, but you never know till it's over. But I'm thinking of someone else who just
Right, so
practically wants to give up.
I read the books before we had this class.
Oh, yes.
So like I'm following along with the movies and remembering the different things, like the
Mhm,
different discrepancies between the two. So I'm not entirely sure where you guys are, but is it the Master of Gondor, the Keeper?
I am thinking of the steward, Denethor.
Steward, yeah.
Denethor.
He had something messed up.
He is messed up. Indeed. Indeed. He is missing mini screws. Um, here, I marked a couple of places. Okay. So remember, Gandalf and Pippin show up. And he says to Pippin, button it. That is not a direct quote out of the book or the movie. Just don't say anything. Don't say anything about Boromir because we need to break this to him gently. Second of all, don't say anything about Aragorn. Why not say something about Aragorn?
Because Aragorn's gonna take his place.
Aragorn's the king. Look, he's going to take your job because you're not really the king, Denethor. Newsflash. You're the steward. You're supposed to protect it until the king comes. So don't say anything. Does Denethor already know all of this when they show up?
Yeah.
He seems to know. Yeah, Oren.
It's weird that Pippin still calls Aragorn Shredder. Yeah. You should know him by now. You should know his real name.
Well, but do you know anybody that you call by a nickname that you know their real name too? Maybe you do, maybe you don't.
Only one person, and that's because I don't know his real name.
Okay, well, often, Oren, I think often when we meet someone, Oren, we call them by the thing we met them as. Do you know what I mean? Like that's how they were introduced to me. So that's what I call them. Do you guys know that everybody called C.S. Lewis Jack? Because when he was a little boy, he just announced to his family, from now on, I am called Jack. Because he didn't like his name. He's like, from now on, I'm Jack. Like, okay, from now on, you are Jack. And for the rest of his life, all his friends called him Jack, even though they knew that wasn't his name. Clive. If my name was Clive, I might want to be called Jack too. Okay, so Denethor, I did not mark the place, okay, and I'm not going to wait, make you wait while I look for it. But
That's the J and J.R.R.
yeah, John. He's John Ronald Rule Tolkien. Okay. Denethor seems to have a source of information, we're just going to say. And he seems to know, first of all, they found Boromir's broken horn. He's like, Something's not good with my son. You want to explain? You want to explain this?
Like broken horn?
Yeah, he had a horn that he would blow for help. It was really loud, sort of like we talked about a little bit about the Song of Roland in here. He would blow the horn, and when the orcs attacked, the horn was shattered, and the pieces drifted down the river, and they found them, and they brought them to Denethor. It's like, is this Boromir's horn? Yes, it is. That's not good. But Denethor also seems to know some very disturbing information about the ring. He's found out, or he's guessed. I think I know. I think I know what the secret mission is. And he knows. And this is what Denethor says. And where will other men look for help if Gondor falls? Answered Denethor. If I had this thing now, in the deep vaults of this citadel, we should not then shake with dread under this gloom, fearing the worst, and our counsels would be undisturbed. If you do not trust me to endure the test, you do not know me yet. Denethor says, you don't think I could handle the ring? Oh, I can so handle the ring. Well, you think I'm not strong enough? Is that why you didn't bring it here? What is the rest of the world going to do if Gondor falls? We are on the front lines. Nonetheless, I do not trust you, said Gandalf. Had I done so, I could have sent this thing hither to your keeping and spared myself and others much anguish. And now, hearing you speak, I trust you less, no more than Boromir. Nah, stay your wrath. I do not trust myself in this, and I refused this thing, even as a freely given gift. You are strong, and can still in some matters govern yourself, Denethor. Yet if you had received this thing, it would have overthrown you. Were it buried beneath the roots of Mindalluin, still it would burn your mind away as the darkness grows, and the yet worse things follow that soon shall come upon us. For a moment, the eyes of Denethor glowed again as he faced Gandalf, and Pippin felt once more the strain between their wills. But almost it seemed as if their glances were like blades from eye to eye, flickering as they fenced. Isn't that an awesome simile? Their stares are like fencing blades. Pippin trembled, fearing some dreadful stroke, but suddenly Denethor relaxed and grew cold again. He shrugged his shoulders. If I had, he said, such words and ifs are vain. It has gone into the shadow, and only time will show what doom awaits us. The time will not be long. It's over. Gandalf, you're an idiot. You just got rid of the only thing that could save us. Time's just ticking down now. It's over. Yeah, Oren. I don't think they literally glow, Oren. I think it's metaphorical. Do you know how sometimes we would say you're really happy and your eyes sparkle? If you look in someone's eyes when they're really, really excited or happy, they have different looking eyes than they do if they're depressed or sad or grieving. But it's not real. It's a feeling. Do you know, they say that the eyes are the windows to your soul. When you look in someone's eyes, you can kind of see how they're feeling. You can see if they're tired or if they're sad or if they're happy or excited or elated. So I understand your question, but does that make sense? I don't think they literally glow. Some creatures may literally glow, but yeah, I think Gollum's pretty creepy. But you know, creatures' eyes do glow at night. Have you ever driven in late at night and seen glowing eyes by the side of the road? And it's usually it's because the headlights are shining off it. But like a raccoon or a possum or something, we live out in the country, and this happens a lot. You drive in late, and suddenly there's just these two little beady eyes, and it's not Gollum, but it's just probably. I'm hoping. It's a raccoon or a possum or a skunk or something, you know, or a deer. Usually those eyes are farther up. These eyes are usually down in the. Sometimes we get foxes too, down there in the weeds. You know, we came in late after that eclipse. Remember, because I told you it took us forever to get home. We got home at 11 o'clock, and we were driving in, and there were just suddenly two little eyes by the side. But so Denethor has given up. When you read chapters 5 through 10, you're going to know a little bit more about Denethor and why he's giving up. Be on the lookout for that as you read. If you don't already know, be on the lookout for what it is that's causing Denethor to despair. But is everybody in Middle Earth despairing? No.
I'm guessing Sauron isn't.
Well, so although check chapters 5 through 10, not despair because he's still trying, but a little bit dismayed at some points, a little bit dismayed. I found hope. Oh, first of all, do you think Gandalf has hope?
Yeah.
Gandalf seems to have hope. He keeps saying, I don't know where the ring bearer is right now, but I don't feel that he's fallen into the shadow. And if we said that, it would be silly. You're like, I'm trusting my feelings. But Gandalf is a wizard. He knows things. He gets a vibe, you know what I mean? And he can tell if something shifted. But here is the most lovely, hopeful person. Listen to this. Remember, I already said Pippin and Gandalf showed up in Gondor. And he meets a guy named Baragond. Do you remember this? He's with the Tower Guard, and they put Baragond in charge of Pippin to show him around and everything. And what are these Black Riders traveling on now? Yeah, these big. I think the Nazgul are actually the Black Riders, but they call them fell beasts. They're like dragony, like flying lizard things. It's not good.
They got like no eyes.
There's some sort of, I get the impression, I don't think this is said, I get the impression Mordor genetically engineered them, because we already know they genetically engineered orcs. I think they invented this creature. And what happens to the people below when they fly over, even when they fly up really high?
Wasn't it Melkor that created orcs?
Probably. They said they were elves,
Yeah.
tortured and bent and twisted to create this new, like a fake race of elves, like an evil race. But what when these beasts with the Black Riders fly over, do you remember what happens to the people on the ground underneath them?
They get terrified.
They get terrified. Sometimes they don't even see it; they just feel it. Like suddenly something bad is happening over them. Something bad is in their presence. And it happened while Pippin and Baragond were on the walls of Minas Tirith looking out. Suddenly, they felt it. I want to read that part. Listen to this. What was that? Asked Baragond. You also felt something? Yes, muttered Pippin. It is the sign of our fall and the shadow of doom, a fell rider of the air. Yes, the shadow of doom, said Baragond. I fear that Minas Tirith shall fall. Night comes. The very warmth of my blood seems stolen away. For a time they sat together with bowed heads and did not speak. It scared them, but what else did it do to them? What do they sound like? Do they have hope? Yes, the shadow of doom. Minas Tirith will fall. The night is coming. No hope. That's what the Black Riders do to you too. They steal away your hope. But then listen to this. Suddenly Pippin looked up and saw that the sun was still shining and the banners still streaming in the breeze. He shook himself. It is past, he said. No, my heart will not yet despair. Gandalf fell and has returned and is with us. We may stand, if only on one leg, or at least be left still upon our knees. Rightly said, cried Baragond, rising and striding to and fro. Nay, though all things must come utterly to an end in time, Gondor shall not perish yet, not though the walls be taken by a reckless foe that will build a hill of carrion before them. There are still other fastnesses and secret ways of escape into the mountains. Hope and memory shall live still in some hidden valley where the grass is green. No, did anything change in their situation? They're just sitting there. And one moment, night comes, Minas Tirith will fall, all is lost. And then suddenly Baragon's like, you know what? We can keep fighting. And if we have to retreat, we'll find some cave somewhere and we'll hide out and we'll be like a rebel band, a guerrilla warfare attacks on the orcs coming by. In one moment, the moment between hope and despair. I think this is one of the state mottos. I don't remember. It's in there's some Latin book that has, sayings to memorize. Maybe this is one of yours. Dum spiro. Sparrow. While I breathe, I hope. If you're alive, there is still hope. While I breathe, I hope. Although I had a student once that kept wanting to translating it, while I hope I breathe. No. That means if you give up hope, you will die. While I breathe, I hope. Although, you know what? If you give up all hope, it's almost like you did die, if you know what I mean, inside. But Pippin is not going to give up, and Baragon is not going to give up. They're going to keep fighting, even if they hide out with a little band. It's not over till it's over, as they say. And they still don't know where Frodo and Sam are. Remember, we know that it doesn't look good for them. Frodo's been poisoned by a giant spider, and Sam is going to attempt to rescue beyond all hope, honestly. But he's going to do it because it has to be done. They don't know. But Gandalf said, well, we'll just keep fighting until Sauron gets the ring or it's over. All right, let me check. This was... Okay. One more person who's lovely, got a lovely hope. Theoden, King of Rohan. What was he like when Gandalf first showed up in Rohan? Well, and what made him that way? Strife, definitely. I mean, Saruman's attacking his lands. Doesn't look good. But there was something that was feeding it. Worm tongue, indeed. A plant, like a spy, basically a spy planted by Saruman. And what was his job? Suck away his hope. Suck away his hope. You're old, Theoden. You can't do this. Sauron is too strong. It's not going to work out. You need to just sit here and, hunker down. Don't try to fight because you can never win. Sucked away his hope. And Gandalf brought it back. He said, Theoden, you can still handle a sword. You still got a horse. What are you doing? And I want to read to you, this is the very end of the final chapter you read. Oh, actually, it's not, but hey. Sneak preview of chapter 5. At the end of chapter 4, I believe, they heard the horns in the distance and they knew the riders of Rohan were on the way. Suddenly the king cried to Snowmane, and his horse sprang away. Behind him his banner blew in the wind. White horse upon a field of green, but he outpaced it. And after him thundered the knights of his house, but he was ever before them. Éomer rode there, the white horse tail on his helm floating in his speed, and the front of the first Éored roared like a breaker foaming to the shore, but Theoden could not be overtaken. Thay, he seemed, or the battle fury of his fathers ran like new fire in his veins, and he was borne up on Snowmane like a god of old, even as Orome the Great in the battle of the Valar when the world was young. His golden shield was uncovered, and lo, it shone like an image of the sun, and the grass flamed into green about the white feet of his steed. For morning came, morning and a wind from the sea, and darkness was removed, and the hosts of Mordor wailed, and terror took them, and they fled and died, and the hoofs of wrath rode over them. And then all the host of Rohan burst into song, and they sang as they slew, for the joy of battle was on them, and the sound of their singing that was fair and terrible came even to the city. That's hope. They're charging numbers way more than they are. But hope. The difference between hope and spare is like the difference I told you between the partial eclipse and the total eclipse, that moment it was total, everything was different. Everything was different. Hope. It's their greatest weapon right now in Return of the King. Hope Frodo makes it. Hope we can hold out until then. Read chapters 5 through 10. Remember, skip the Dorothy Mills and do the paper, and I'll see you next week. And you guys can go. Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna need a push in the chair.
Thank you, Jonathan.